Welcome back, everyone, to the Artisan Church All-Inclusive Podcast. My name is Reed Conley. I'm the pastor at Artisan Church, and I want to introduce to you a new host for this season. Tell us who you are.
Hello, thank you. I am Stephanie Meyer, and I'm very excited to be co-hosting with you on the new season of the Artisan Podcast.
Yeah, awesome. I'm so glad that you're here as well.
Thank you.
We are putting together a number of topics to talk about, and we'll probably have some special guests come in. But want to get to know you a little bit in our first time together on this podcast. So I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe a little bit about your faith background.
Sure. So I would say my faith background is a little bit of a hodgepodge. It's started as kind of what I like to call a DIY project. I wasn't raised in the church, so to speak. I was raised by a single mom who worked and managed a household, and going to church regularly unfortunately wasn't always a top priority, but I was always curious about it. I was always curious about religion and always seeking, and my mother always encouraged that and gave me a lot of freedom to kind of explore what my faith meant to me. And I've attended several different types of denominational churches, anything from Southern Baptist to Catholic Mass, and I got an introduction to a lot of different flavors of Christianity, and also went through a period of really questioning my faith altogether, and had some phases of some pretty intense doubt. And throughout all of it, my faith never went away. Just my understanding of it changed.
Yeah.
And so I'm still on that journey.
Was there a time in all of your travels where you felt like you really belonged to a faith community, or something was going on that was beyond just your own personal journey with other people?
Yes, absolutely. So although I jokingly say it started as kind of a DIY project, it didn't stay that way. It was very much a journey that I went on and then was guided by influential people in my life. There's a handful of people that helped me along my faith journey tremendously. And I would say probably the time that I actually felt like I was part of an actual community of faith was fairly recently, actually. I attended a Baptist church out in Vail, Hulls Grove Baptist Church, wonderful place, and the people there were just lovely, and the pastor was wonderful. I learned so much, which is what I needed at the time. I was still seeking kind of an education on the Bible and the preaching of Jesus and the gospel, which I didn't really have growing up. So It was a wonderful, wonderful education for me, and the community was very warm and welcoming. I never felt judged. It was a great experience. I didn't end up joining officially, for various reasons, none of which had anything to do with having a bad experience. I had a wonderful experience. But I would say that was probably the first time I actually felt part of a larger faith community that was organized together. And I would say that the pastors there and the congregation there are certainly part of my faith journey.
It sounds like a really healthy kind of a place, and I'm glad to hear about any kind of other churches in our area that are doing good work in teaching and gathering people up and caring for them. And so that's wonderful. And also, I'm really glad that we've been able to get to know you at Artisan as well, and your family. So this is great, and I'm glad to hear some more of your story today.
Yeah, thank you.
So today, let's go ahead and jump into our topic. And the theme that we're looking at for this series, we're gonna jump around to different topics as we've done before, but really look at things under the overarching theme of faith that hurts and heals. And so we'll look at specifically what the faith community brings to some different struggles and conflicts that we encounter and that our community encounters, and what the Bible says about it, and what maybe sometimes what science says about it, and what kind of research we can find, and just have some good conversations. So today we want to talk about a big one, which is mental health.
Yes.
Mental health. I want to frame this episode with just a little bit of a definition of mental health. Speaking of mental health, I feel like I'm forgetting someone else that's in the room right now. Rich, you just came to mind for some reason, and Rich is not off screen right now. But Rich, I just want you to say hi so that everyone knows you're here with us too.
Hi.
We've got Rich Green, who's helping us with audio today, and Rich, I hope you'll chime in and
as a disembodied voice,
disembodied voice that steers us back to the path of finishing a podcast episode at some point. No, I appreciate your insight and your wisdom. So jump in anytime, interrupt us. But I want to talk about mental health, and we'll start with a rough definition. This is kind of my understanding of mental health, in that it refers to a person's overall emotional, psychological, social well-being, and it is something that influences how we think, feel, and act, as well as how we manage stress and relate to others, as well as how we make our choices in life. And I believe that everybody has mental health, and everyone has some state of being in their mental health. The other thing we might talk about today is mental illness. And this is a very broad term that gets thrown around, I think, a lot. But mental illness would be maybe we could describe it as a medical condition that affects a person's thinking, feeling, behavior, mood. Those conditions include depression, anxiety disorders, bipolar disorder, PTSD, diagnosable illnesses that can last for a short period of time or can be long-lasting or lifelong, that affect our functioning and our quality of life. I think it's important to say right off the bat that these kind of afflictions and mental illnesses are not a reflection of spiritual failure, and they don't have also don't have some sort of sign of personal weakness attached to them. These are things that can affect absolutely anyone. Absolutely anyone. So when we talk about mental health, what comes to mind for you that maybe we haven't already touched on?
Well, I think everything you just said pretty much sums it up. But in the frame of looking at mental health through the faith community and through a spiritual lens, I think there is a lot of that stigma that sticks around. Even today, as people are becoming more and more comfortable talking about it, there still seems to be that little bit of disconnect between a church community, a community of faith, and mental health and mental well-being. There are a lot of misconceptions, I think, still regarding what you just said about it not necessarily having anything to do with the spiritual choices or weakness or strength. It really, like you said, everybody has mental health, just like everybody has physical health. So, I think looking at it that way and normalizing it could really help.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's definitely stigma involved with this topic, and I've heard harmful kind of rhetoric even from a pulpit and from church leaders that say, maybe you just need to pray more, or you need to just get in the Word more, or this thing that's causing you distress, whatever it is. It's just something that we can address with some sort of spiritual exclusive, treatment, and maybe you're just not doing enough of that kind of a topic, and so
Yeah, unlike physical illnesses, which we tend to equate to being outside of our control, right? It's something that happens to us, and it may not be something that we actually did that caused it. There tends to be this equation that mental health is something, and unfortunately, sometimes in spiritual communities, they give an attribution of sin alongside mental health.
yeah.
And that you have both control over it and that it's equated to sin, and that can have a negative connotation with even addressing it within a spiritual community.
100%. Yeah. There's a lot of shame tied to that way of thinking.
Absolutely.
And there's something about what's going on in our minds that it might be easier to brush it off as opposed to a physical ailment or something that's outwardly present. You can't ignore a broken leg, where, maybe you're just not as, sad as you think you are. It could be dismissed, I think, in many ways, which makes it more difficult to treat or to get help, which ultimately, I think if we had one message to come out of this, if there's a good message to come out, everyone can benefit from getting help with their mental health, and I say help from professionals.
Absolutely.
And
there's no stigma with going to the doctor if you break a leg, or if you get sick from a cold. There's no stigma attached with that.
Yeah.
And yet, we tend to stigmatize mental health and going to a mental health professional with this negative connotation that there's something wrong with you, and therefore, you are broken in a way that's not good for our community or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's also an element of just feeling like you're going to be judged, even by well-meaning people who wouldn't necessarily judge you in other ways, but if you come to them and say, I'm having some really dark thoughts, or I'm not feeling like myself, and it could potentially make someone else uncomfortable, and we don't want to make anybody else uncomfortable. So it's really hard to just reach out to your immediate community, because your immediate community is not equipped to deal with stuff like that. So seeking a professional could really help, but it takes a lot of courage to even say that you need help.
Absolutely.
Indeed. And some people would like to speak to a pastor about an ailment that they're having. Maybe they're feeling very depressed, or they're very anxious, or there's some sort of acute grief issue that if they've lost someone they love, maybe they've lost their spouse or something, they definitely would reach out to a pastor or be open to a conversation with a pastor. But sometimes pastors aren't equipped beyond just the listening stages for something that's significant or a severe issue. And I think that's where it's important to have people who have the right tools, and we don't want anybody to be self-medicating or just being told that, you need to pray more, or you need to read your Bible more, or something like that. But what are some other things that you've heard in a faith community or in a church or somewhere that have not been helpful with someone who's struggling with mental illness or mental health?
Again, this is not to be judgmental against other faith communities, but
yeah.
There can be these vocalizations of, brother or sister, you just need to get yourself right with the Lord, and then all of these problems will go away. And I don't know if that's a helpful way to look at it when someone is really, they may be reaching out for a support system when the onus is now being placed back onto the individual. And if you don't mind me circling back around to one other thing,
Yeah.
even within the mental health community, I graduated with a degree in psychology, and I worked for a year and a half in a mental health facility after I graduated. And even within mental health facilities, there's a wide delta between the medical side of a mental health facility and the psychological side of a mental health facility. Psychiatrists, who are licensed medical professionals that can prescribe medicines, like most doctors, treat symptoms with medicine. So the feeling of depression is assigned a medication that helps you to level out those mood swings or the depression. Whereas the psychologist looks at the holistic, what's the cause of this? And how can we cognitively sort of look at this and discuss this to help you get in a better headspace for dealing with this so it doesn't come back again and you don't have to rely on the medicine. Those are kind of, although they're put hand in hand in a mental health facility, they're two different approaches
Right.
to the same problem.
Yeah.
And it can be, even within a church community, it can be dangerous to say, oh, well, all you need is your medication. Or, likewise, all you need to do is pray about this.
Or talk to somebody.
Or talk to somebody
Yeah.
and you'll be okay.
Right.
And the answer may not be one or the other. It's not an exclusive kind of thing.
Right.
You just reminded me of this concert that I went to, Christian concert recently, and I told you about this.
Yeah.
Yeah. The person on stage, the artist, was getting into an emotional moment and getting into a sort of a healing moment with the crowd and talking about, oh gosh, I think the Spirit is really moving here, and it was a great time. I enjoyed it, but at one point she says, I feel like there's an opportunity for everybody in this room to be healed, and if you're really struggling with mental illness, and it was great that she talked about mental illness. She said, I think there are some people that could just stop taking their medicine right now and they would be okay. And I said, no, please don't stop taking your medicine cold turkey today.
Oh, no.
At least let me get out of the parking lot. You know? I don't know. No, I don't want to make light of it, but it was, I think, like most things, balance is helpful here. We read in the Bible about Jesus did miracles to heal people of casting out demons, and we can look back and say that was, that might have been bipolarism, that might have been multiple personality disorder. I don't even know if that's the right clinical term, but that might have been some sort of mental affliction that Jesus was healing them of. That could happen today, right? And it could. But we also have professionals that have really great tools to care for us, just like we have doctors and accountants.
And that's a
Absolutely.
blessing too. That's a blessing from God too, is that He has given gifts to these people who have the ability to learn these subjects and study the mind and study our personalities and help us to have this support system within the medical community as well. And so I don't think that we should. I mean, this is very opinion-based, I guess, but having worked on both sides of this, it shouldn't be a stigma, and within the faith community, it shouldn't be mutually exclusive. It shouldn't be that faith is the only tool that you rely on to heal yourself when God may have put people in your path who are equipped with these gifts from Him, the ability to diagnose, the ability to prescribe, the ability to counsel, whatever it is that can help you to become a more full and complete person, and then share that with your faith community.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And kind of going back to the concert story you were just sharing, it's, again, very well-meaning people. And really, I believe that most people are speaking from their heart, from their soul, but that is extremely dangerous. And I think we need some more education and more just normalization to talk about it within the community. And it kind of reminds me of sometimes you'll hear people say, if they're going through a hard time or if they're facing a medical challenge, they may ask for prayers on Facebook or social media or whatever. And maybe things get better and they say, oh, your prayers worked and God's hearing our prayers. But then someone else who's going through something, maybe it didn't work out for them. And that might make them think, well, what am I doing wrong? What's wrong with my prayers? Or did I not get enough? Is it a numbers thing? Or it doesn't make sense, because those prayer success stories, and I'm not discounting the power of prayer. I am a believer that the prayer is powerful, but those people that have those success stories and attribute it to prayer, those are success stories told by the victors. They're told by people who had success. There's a lot of other stories of people who don't have that result that they prayed for. And it can be very, very hard as a person who I've been through that myself, to think, well, if that's the case, why, what am I doing wrong? And then that brings it back on the individuals. Like, I'm not praying enough. I'm not praying the right way. And yeah,
that's
that
harmful.
It can be very harmful. And it's easy to slip into that mindset if you're surrounding yourself with people who perpetuate that type of thinking. And I think that God calls us to be there for one another and to help out one another. So I think if all we needed was prayer, then we wouldn't need each other. So I think that's kind of the whole point, is you need both.
Absolutely. Yeah. He calls us to love each other.
Yeah.
And so part of that love has to be the acceptance and the lifting up of others in their time of need. So,
100%.
So what are some ways that faith communities are doing a good job in this? Maybe you've heard of some, or making at least a positive environment.
Ooh, I know.
You know.
I know. I've got a good one.
Okay.
So I think every time that a faith community, and especially leaders in the church, not to put the onus on you, but I'm just saying, whenever they reinforce the aspect of our brokenness as a community, we are not perfect. We are broken, all of us. And your brokenness makes us the community. That's what brings us together, is our brokenness and our need for faith. So every time that we can reinforce that to the congregation, to the people we meet on the street who are asking about our church or our faith community, I think that that's a great thing. We belonged to a church in another state before coming here, and they used to start every service with, we are a community of sinners and broken people, and there's always room for one more.
I like that.
And that's, I think that that's great. Every time you can reaffirm it, it's a great thing.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that very much.
Feel free to steal it.
You might forget what church you're at.
Not a bad thing.
Well, I think I think that really speaks to the scripture that talks about, well, obviously about healing. That's there for us as we follow Christ. Christ is the great healer, but also where we are made a new creation, and we are made new in Christ. And that's not a one moment making newness. It is a process a lot of times, and healing brokenness is definitely one of the things that keeps me going, is seeing where God is at work in people, and in mind, body, and spirit. But I think I think that's a great perspective to take on it. I was remembering another scripture. We recently put up some art in our space that's based on the Beatitudes. And I was thinking about that as in terms of how it might be speaking to mental health. And often this is in Matthew 5. We read these verses that are often considered, great poetry, but it's this deep kind of groundbreaking, earth-shaking sermon that Jesus is making, flipping the values of the current society on their head. And Jesus says that we need to name human experiences. We need to be offering comfort and dignity to those who are hurting and those who are the least of these. We use those words a lot, but when Jesus says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit," or "Blessed are those who mourn," I don't know how it could not be speaking to some mental illness issues, because he's not ignoring their emotional pain of the people that he's talking about, and he's really he's lifting it up in those verses. So to say that you belong in the kingdom of God, and I think that's true for all of us, but especially it needs to be said loudest to those who are experiencing trouble and struggle.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think we can expect someone who is struggling with mental health issues, specifically if they're having a very serious mental illness. We can't really realistically expect them to heal themselves, and it's sort of like when you think of someone who's struggling with something spiritual or emotional. Let's say it's maybe not even a mental health issue. Maybe they're just going through a really hard time. If they can't get their basic needs met, like if you're worried about paying for groceries, it's not likely you're going to go spend $100 an hour on a private therapist.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I love that the Beatitudes, because it's saying to me, you don't have to be any certain way. You can be broken and you are still part of the community. You are still part of God's plan, of God's love, and it's not on you to fix yourself. Because so many people just struggle with everyday things, and then your mental health often takes a back seat to that.
There's this psychological pyramid that's called the hierarchy of needs. And, down at the bottom of the pyramid are the basic needs, the food, shelter, safety. And then as you climb up the pyramid towards the top is this self-actualization kind of thing, in which a lot of our mental health and well-being could potentially be categorized in that, if you're trying to sort of put things into place to sort of understand where you're at on this. And I think that's a great thing. What you're talking about is that there's so many people that are struggling with just making their bill, like not being kicked out of where they're living, or putting enough food on the table for their kids, or, being able to take their family to the doctor. Those things, we tend to sort of then put the higher functioning stuff of, okay, well, I don't feel great about myself, or I have a terrible body image, or I'm depressed about the loss of a loved one. That all gets swept under a rug for a later date to sort of deal with. And then before you know it, we have a very big pile of stuff underneath that rug.
Yeah, it's almost treated like having a mental issue is almost like a luxury if you can deal with it. And
first world problem, right?
Yeah. I think that's part of the problem, is we're treating mental health as more of a luxury than a necessity.
Right. And I, some of that can be part of our culture, for good or for bad. I mean, when you see things on television, and I'm not trying to belittle anyone who thinks that they need to take their pet to a pet psychologist, but when we have those sort of things in our culture, where there's people who charge a lot of money to have therapy for a chihuahua, then maybe it can sort of belittle the effect that has on us. Like, oh, it's absolutely ridiculous that this even exists. I'm not going to participate in that kind of behavior, even for myself.
Yeah.
Not to belittle any
No, not at
chihuahuas
all.
in need, but
I used to have a Chihuahua. I didn't put her in therapy, but
Well, why not?
Imagine how
Maybe
much
I
more
should have.
fulfilled she would have been.
no, that Chihuahua got me through a lot of my
There you
stuff.
go.
Like there were some days that she was the only reason why I got out of bed. Honest truth. It's like my dog needs to eat. Guess I better get up and take care of her. And honestly, like we're laughing, but truly, I think also pets, dogs, cats, they form such a bond. They take on our moods too. When I felt depressed, I think my dog was depressed too because I was. And of course, like why wouldn't they? Because they love us so much.
Right. And not as much cheese was being dispensed.
Right. Yeah. Well, if you're not cooking for yourself because you're
Exactly.
depressed,
Exactly.
then your dog's not going to get the same amount of fun, joy, and snacks and treats, and it all matters.
I know we're kind of like putting this in humor, but there is a thing. I mean, like, my dog, who I love dearly, I am quite convinced that animal has no other function on this earth other than my well-being, because he couldn't fend for himself, whether through inbreeding and all of the other nasty things that we've done to make these cute teddy bear-looking dogs. He's not the direct descendant of the wolves that used to hunt in the packs. And so
I've seen your dog, and that's definitely true.
Yeah, it is. I mean, he is. He's ridiculous. But for my own well-being, he is my own personal canine blood pressure medicine. And
Yes.
so I like to think that God put him on the earth to be that for me. That way I can give thanks for him being there, and also I don't have to look at him in disdain because he has none of his, hunting instincts still, other than for sniffing out whatever we're cooking.
Yeah. Well, I've definitely I can attest to the fact that dogs are great friends to people, and we have a dog at our house, and he's definitely part of the family. He definitely senses things that we don't pick up on before we do, and so I think he's a good help in a lot of cases. For he's not really a cuddler, but anyway, he's.
Aw.
He has his own mental health journey, but we're
You
in
guys
it.
are mutually supportive.
We're in it together. I do one of my practices. I'm not currently, nor have I really ever had clinical mental health support for myself, but I do recognize when I'm not myself, either from stress or anxiety. I often take my dog for a walk, and that is one of the best medicines that I found that works for me, is to go for a long walk, and that'll get my body moving. It'll get me outside of my head. It'll get me, alert my senses and get the blood moving. And almost always. I'm not a healthcare professional on this, but almost always that makes me feel better and makes my problems a little bit smaller. So I recommend going for a walk for anyone.
Well, you're
if
not
it's
off base.
listening.
The healthcare professionals agree with you.
Okay,
I mean,
good.
They do.
I did not research that advice before I offered it, but the dog's involved.
It's good for your dog too.
It
The
is.
whole thing about it, so what that does is it takes you out of your headspace into a different headspace. And to circle back to actually what we're supposed to be talking about today, the faith community, that's what they can help to do for people who are suffering, because we tend to focus on this world, the troubles that you have with your bills, the troubles that you have with your job or your spouse or whatever, whether it's a relationship or a physical problem or whatever it is, that is all rooted in the world of man. And a good faith community can help you to recalibrate outside of just focusing on that,
Right.
into the more the bigger picture.
Expands your
of God's kingdom.
perspective to not get caught up in your own problems, and that makes total sense. And I think the next step is finding people that care about you, that you can talk to. Maybe this is a step before a health professional or some kind of clinical assistance, but sometimes that's a big help for me, just to voice my problems to someone else, and that's another way that I get the perspective change for my own.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it helps you zoom out and get out of your own head for sure. Yeah, but some people might not be comfortable opening up that part of their life to someone they know. Like there may be some people that are more comfortable talking to a complete stranger and pay them, or have their insurance pay them. Yeah. And that's cool too.
Yeah. So I noticed you shared a little bit about not wanting to get out of bed sometimes, except for your dog. But and I appreciate you sharing that. Is there more to your mental health journey that you might feel comfortable sharing with us?
Sure. Yeah. I've struggled with depression and anxiety for, I would say, most of my life. Actually, it runs in my family. It's not something that I was treated for until I was an adult. But I did start seeing a therapist when I was in my 20s. And it was actually through a Christian ministry program called CareNet. And I'm not sure if they're still around. I lost touch with that therapist when I moved, but they provide low cost and maybe even free, I'm not sure about that, mental health counseling services. Pretty much no questions asked. I think it may have something to do with income, but anyway, we can look into that and put that in the notes if anyone's interested. Yeah. But so yeah, I started going to see a therapist to deal with some anxiety and depression, and it's still something that I think creeps back into my life every now and then, but I have a much better handle on it. The depressive episodes I went through when I was mentioning like not wanting to get out of bed except for to feed my dog, that was luckily behind me. Those days are behind me. But at that time, I was single. I didn't have my son. I didn't. This was right before the pandemic. I think I was working completely remote, so I was very isolated, and I was also going through a divorce at the time. There was a lot of just environmental issues that were exacerbating my already existing tendency to be depressed. And so once some of those external factors were adjusted, I started feeling better. But I also had to talk to my primary care doctor about getting on some medication to help me through it. And a lot of people don't feel comfortable sharing that. I don't mind. I try to tell people as often as I can because I don't want people to think that there's any shame in it. So yeah, I took some medication that the first medication did not work well for me at all. It made me feel terrible. It made me have no feelings, and which scared me. And I ended up being allergic to it. So that did not work. I worked with a psychiatrist to manage my medication, found something that works a lot better for me, and it definitely helped, but it's not a cure-all. It's definitely not one thing or the other, medication or counseling. I benefited greatly from both. And then at one point I was able to go off of the medication and did really well, and didn't really have any issues until after the birth of my son, Edwin. He's almost 2 now, but when he was a newborn, I had postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, and it was awful. It was very debilitating. I won't go into too much detail because I don't want to keep us here forever, but it was, I would say, the most how people you were saying earlier. The people in the Bible who were possessed or had demonic control over themselves or whatever, that's the closest I think I've ever felt to something like that, where I felt like my thoughts were not my own, and I felt just in a very dark place. And it was scary and it didn't feel like it was me. And so I can understand why people might say something like that, where they might say, oh, this is evil. This is the enemy working against you. You just need to pray more. I did a lot of praying during that time. What I needed was support. What I needed was time to just get all those hormones and brain chemicals back to normal. And I needed to not be judged. And eventually it did get better. And it was scary also because I was afraid to talk to people about it who hadn't gone through it, because I didn't want to scare anybody. I didn't want people to think, oh, she might hurt someone or she might hurt herself. It was never like that. But, going through that and feeling scared of how you're feeling, you don't want to tell people sometimes because you don't want to scare them. You don't want to worry them.
Right.
So that was a really tough time. And I try to tell any new moms that I know, like certain signs to watch out for that I experienced, and just try to educate people as best I can from my own experience. But of course, I'm not a doctor. But just if you start having those intrusive thoughts, they call them, to get help and to let somebody know, let a professional know.
Yeah. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that. That is really important.
Yeah.
And personal. And I think it's helpful to share it and let this be a way to send that out into the world, because it's real. I've encountered some of that in dear friends and even in our family. And it's one of those things that's not really talked about too much. And I'm glad you're doing better.
Thank you. Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I had good support, and I did have my faith, but I had a holistic approach to it, and I really think that's what helped me.
Yeah. Well, I was hearing you saying, the balance of the counseling or the therapy and the medicine hand in hand. That sounds like a healthy approach to me. And then the other part is normalizing it by talking about it. I think
Absolutely.
This is something that happens often, and for any number of reasons. And you also mentioned, chemicals in your brain being part of the affliction here. That's beyond our control a lot of times. And when I think about those things, God made people in a lot of different ways, and we talk about brokenness, and we talk about healing, and that's part of it as well. But also, I think some people are formed and born with mental imbalances that may not be repairable in the sense that they're going to be able to function like everybody else. I hope I'm saying that in a kind way. I mean, there's a whole spectrum here, right?
Sure.
So I think
we have terms like neurodivergent now.
Neurodivergent.
And we didn't have that 20 years ago.
Right.
So to say that's a way that some people were created. God loves everybody, no matter what. And so that was my message. God loves you.
Yeah. That's what it all comes down to, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And from a faith community, as far as providing support, and tying it into judgment, a faith community, this is opinion-based statement. When you say, it's so much better to say, what do you need? What can I give you? What do you need from me, than to say what you need is?
Yes.
So when we say what you need is, it carries a judgment value along with it, because you're judging what's wrong with that person and what they need to fix them. But when you ask, what do you need from me? What can I give you? Now you're opening yourself up to be in service to that person's needs. And for me, that's about what our faith is centered around.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with that 100%. When I was struggling, one of the best things people could ask me was that, like, what do you need? What can I do to help? Sometimes I didn't know how to answer that, but just the fact that they asked rather than told me what I should do meant a lot. Or just to even be noticed. Like I mentioned, the church I went to a few years ago, the pastor there, Travis Elmore, great guy. His wife's lovely. They actually came up to me after service one day, and I had been away for a while. I'd stopped going for a while, and they approached me after the service and just kind of asked, like, "Hey, are you okay? We noticed you weren't here," but it wasn't in like a judgy way. It was very much like, "Are you okay?" Like, just checking on you. And the pastor there, he said something that I'll probably never forget. He said, you're not just another face in the crowd, which meant so much because it was like, oh, someone notices when I'm there, but they also notice my absence. And I mean, this was a pretty big church. They're not like a mega church or anything, but
Yeah.
it was a pretty big congregation. So to have the pastor say, like, you're noticed, and when you're not here, we notice, not to judge, but because we just want to make sure you're okay. And that meant a lot. And, I'm still friends with them. And, I hope that I can be like that for someone who's struggling. Just like, I notice you. I notice that something's not right. What can I do? And that's, I think, what it's all about.
Yeah. That's a great way to say it, too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Our pastor does that too.
Yeah.
Every time I've been sick, he's always said, "Are you guys okay? What do you need? What do you?" And I know that that's a physical sickness, but it goes the same way with men. If you're struggling,
Yeah.
and there are leaders in the church, or even just the person that sits beside you in church that you may not speak to all the time or whatever, when they reach out and say, "What do you need? I noticed you weren't here." Boy, it really does make a difference.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, since I've been coming to Artisan, there's been several people who have approached me and just say, "How are you?" But they're actually listening, and they're actually like, when we do the snack and coffee time after service, people come up and actually engage in conversation and say, "What's going on? How are you doing? How's your job? How's your family?" And, "Oh, I understand your husband had surgery. How's that going?" Like, I hear that and I see that here, and it's wonderful. And I mean, that is what I think a church community should be, is a community of people that are actually engaged with one another and invested in each other. That's huge.
I'm so glad to hear you say that because I was just about to say I probably miss those opportunities more than I catch them as far as being a pastor. And it really is everyone's opportunity to reach out when they see that someone's been missing, and just to offer the interest and the care. I think it goes so far today because we live in a world where it's easy to just ignore. Ignore a text, ignore an email, ignore a call. But to say, I see you. I know that, I don't know your whole story, but I am interested in your well-being. And we're going to be a community that cares like that about each other. We're going to go. It takes some initiative, right? It takes a little bit of bravery to put yourself out there. But maybe if we could, as we kind of wrap up our conversation, which a big topic, we're just touching the surface here, but mental health issues are vast and wide, and they need to be something that we are noticing. And it's not something we can point out and just like other personal afflictions, but if we believe that the church is here called to love other people and to care for other people, then mental health has to be part of that mission. As I'm talking about our community, I'm talking about the church at large. It needs to be really, I think, at the forefront because everybody has something. The more that I meet people, the more that I speak with people and get to hear even just a little bit of their personal side of their lives, everybody has things that they're going through. Some are deep and some are wide. But how we listen and how we show up, how we structure our ministries, all need to be aware and pointing to the place that says it's okay that you're going through something mentally, and we love you, and we want to be part of the healing and the hope that God has for you. Yeah.
And one of the things I'll say that I love that we do here, that Jeanette usually says at the beginning of service, is that we are a welcoming and inclusive and affirming congregation, and wherever you are, you're welcome here. And I think that's so beautiful that you guys make a point to say that every service, because I'm sure that there are people out there, maybe they're not in the room here, maybe they're watching at home or whatever, but I think sometimes there might be someone who's thinking everyone else here has it all figured out except me.
Right.
And I'm if they really knew me,
That's not
they
true.
wouldn't. Yeah. Spoiler alert, not true. So yeah, I think just making a point to say that, I think is important, and I think it's pretty special.
Great. Well, thank you so much again for being here in this conversation. I look
My
forward to
pleasure.
so many more.
Yeah, me too.
What a great first episode of the second season. That's great.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So stay tuned for future episodes. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Thank you.
Peace.